Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for After the Pitch. We have a lot of content to go over in just an hour, so we're going to get started. And don't worry, we will leave time at the end for Q&A. I am Sam Roach Gerber. I am the Vice President at Vermont Center for Emerging Technologies, or VCET, and I'm going to moderate today. My partners for this event are John Antonucci, the director at LaunchVT, and Dave Bradbury, my partner and the president here at VCET. So as many of you probably know, LaunchVT and VCET have been collaborating for several years. We are, quite frankly, obsessed with providing value to Vermont's entrepreneurs, and that's exactly what we hope to do today. Now, the original topic of our event was going to be pitching, but if you're a seasoned entrepreneur or an investor, you know that that's actually the easy part. So assuming you have a solid business plan, maybe you followed Guy Kawasaki's rules for pitch decks, and you do a lot of practicing, pitching's a piece of cake, honestly. What John, Dave, and I realized is that it's actually after the pitch where things get tricky. And that's not just for the entrepreneur, that's for the investor as well. So today we're going to cover what we believe are the two most important post-pitch topics, and that's founder-investor alignment and due diligence. So you can take a look here at our agenda. We'll be here until 1 o'clock, and we'll wrap up our presentation portion at about 11:40, so that you all can ask all the questions that you have. I will moderate the Q&A. We are going to hold questions till the end, but definitely submit them throughout the presentation. We'll get through as many as we can, and if we don't get to your question, we'll definitely provide you with our contact information so that you can follow up. So without further ado, I will hand it over to my friend John, who will discuss founder-investor alignment.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and thanks for joining for the warm-up act. I know you're all here to see and hear Dave's sage wisdom, so I do appreciate you sticking around for my ramblings. I am the Director of Entrepreneurship at the Lake Champlain Chamber, and I have, for the last 4 years, been fortunate to get to run this really great program called LaunchVT. Today's not going to be an infomercial about that. Instead, I'm going to share with you some collective wisdom from some very successful and experienced entrepreneurs and investors in the local community. But before I get to that, I do just want to tell you two things. If you're an entrepreneur, which hopefully there are plenty of you on this call, our application's open for our accelerator tomorrow. So they'll be open for about a month. And it's a fairly straightforward and simple process, but we do encourage everyone to apply. Tell us what you're doing. We'd love to hear about it. And then the other thing I want to share is for investors who are on the call, if you are not familiar with LaunchVT, get in touch, john@launchvt.com. I can check out the website first, launchvt.com. And if you're interested, we do have a private investor event, and then we have big demo night at the end of the program. So if you're interested in checking it out, get in touch. All right, with that, so as Sam said, we wanted to get into the details of what happens after the pitch, because it's much more interesting there. And so in preparing for this, I reached out to 7 investors and 7 entrepreneurs who have been doing this for a while, who I really respect, and they sent me back their top 3 reasons for why things go wrong. And I've distilled those down into 5 alignment issues between investors and founders. Each one has sort of an overarching theme and then some points about alignment. And then lastly, I provide you with some questions. And my belief in all of this is that good decisions are made by having good understanding, and good understanding is achieved by asking good questions. And so if you know what the questions are or are going to be, and you have answers to them, good chance you're going to get aligned more often, and you're going to get to that yes more often. So the first one is credibility. This one is about character, and this is the #1 most cited reason from both founders and investors. I'm going to unpack it in a minute, but I want to try an audience participation exercise, yes, on a Zoom webinar. So if you know me, hopefully you'll trust me enough to do this. If not, maybe by the end you'll try it on your own. But I was thinking about a way to really understand the trust issues around startups. And the best metaphor I could come up with is whitewater rafting, which unfortunately I have a personal experience with. I'm not good at it and almost died doing it. So I'm not going to get into that example, but I want you all to think about whitewater rafting. And if you've not done it before, I'm going to set the scene for you. So if you will, close your eyes. And I want you to imagine you're on the banks of this river. And there's this beautiful whitewater rafting boat kind of tethered to the shore. I'm going to read you what's in front of you. This is a class 5 rapid. This is the definition I got off some website. Extremely difficult, long and violent rapids that follow each other almost without interruption. River filled with obstructions, big drops, violent currents, extremely steep gradient. Rescue preparations are mandatory and should only be attempted by experts. So that's pretty much a startup. And I want you to think about, for a minute with your eyes closed, you're looking at this rapid. And just so you know, a category 6 rapid, the second part of the definition says, paddlers face constant threat of death. So we're not talking about an easy, tranquil river here. And the exercise I want you to go through is to think about who you want in that boat with you. And I don't just mean like your friends or family, but what do you want them to have? And I'm going to pretend that you guys are all shouting out answers that I want to hear. And so someone just said, I want somebody who's done this before. Great, excellent, good point. And then someone said, I want someone who's got a lot of skills at paddling, really know what they're doing. Excellent. I want someone who knows this river really well, like they know where the rocks and features are and they've got a plan for how to navigate them. Yes, definitely want that person in my boat. Someone who doesn't freak out when things go wrong. Yes, definitely want that person in my boat. Don't want anybody freaking out and doing stupid stuff that's going to jeopardize the crew. When you guys are thinking about starting out with a new investor or founder, consider it about heading down a class 5 rapid. And your goal is to build trust and make sure that you want that person in your boat. There's a lot of things that can go wrong along the way, and they will. And so you want to have good people. Now that's the simple part. The harder part is how do you actually achieve that? And so I've got a few bullets there for you guys. The first one is under alignment, say what you mean. Do what you say. Okay? Don't pull punches, be clear, be direct. Okay? No one's going to get upset if you're just telling the truth. And then if you say you're going to do something, make sure you follow through. If you set numbers or metrics, hit them. Nothing builds trust like that. Show you've got what it takes. Maybe you don't have revenue yet. Maybe you don't even have a finished product yet. No worries. Talk about what you've done so far to get there. Prove your resilience. Have a plan. That one's pretty self-explanatory, but you would not believe how many entrepreneurs I see who do not have a plan for how they're going to get where they're going. Ask for help and listen. I know that that can be counterintuitive, but people trust people who, when they know that they're going to ask for help when they get in trouble, more than they trust people who are know-it-alls and are just going to go blindly after this thing and make lots of mistakes. So the questions you want to be asking yourself to create some more alignment are, who do I want in my boat? Specifically, what kind of people, but also what skills are important. Ask yourself or the other person, why are you capable, or why is your team capable of achieving what you say you will? You may have an answer ready. And then what will it take to earn their trust? Know what it'll take, and that's your roadmap. All right, Sam, let's go to number 2. After trust, the next most cited reason for why deals don't get done was just people want different things. And that's fine. While on the surface, venture deals seem like mutually exclusive arrangements or any type of investment, they don't always end up that way. And so what you want to make sure is that you're on the same team and you have the same goals, and you can't get on the same team or know you have the same goals unless you know what you want individually. And again, I see tons of founders who are pitching and they don't know what their future holds for them or what they want or what's right for them. Will they sell this for a multiple in a couple of years? Do they have an acquisition strategy to a strategic partner? Do they want to keep this and pass it down to their kids? Is their primary goal social or environmental benefit over profit? You have to figure that out before you go talk to the people who are going to give you money. And if you're the one handing out the money, you got to know what your goals are too. Are you looking for a high multiple return? Are you looking to create jobs locally? Are you looking to have that social environmental benefit? So understand what your goals are, develop a strategy based on your desired outcomes, and then communicate those goals. Just because you know what your goals are and what your strategy is, make sure that the other person does too. They'll save you guys a lot of back and forth, only to end up at a place 6 months later where you realize that you're not aligned. And the last thing is right size your involvement. If you're writing a small check, you're not going to have a lot of say over that company. And founders, if you're getting a big check, expect to have them involved. So the key questions here are, what are the minimum investment size for this round? Communicate that. Okay, be open about it. How will investors realize a return and when? Please have an answer to that question. Even if it's somewhat flexible, just know what the options are and be clear what you're open to. And then what is the plan for future rounds and bringing in additional investors? Is this going to enhance the current investor's position? Is it going to weaken it? Are you going to rely on them to bring in new capital? And what does the future hold for the company? Number 3. All right, so this one's great. I don't mean to be really throwing out like discouraging truth bombs here, but this one came out super clear. If you're just getting started, do not approach an investor with asking for a 20, 30, $50 million valuation for your company. Nothing's going to undermine your credibility and trust faster. If you're just getting started, your goal is to sell your product, build your business. Okay? Get revenue, get users, get numbers, and then you can start to maybe think about what key progress indicators are going to allow you to move to a higher valuation. But when you're just getting started, don't get hung up on it. Okay? One investor put it very succinctly. He said, "You're worth $3 million until your monthly recurring revenue says otherwise." But the point I'm trying to make is just don't focus on it. It's not important at the beginning. The important thing is creating a good relationship, building trust, proving to the investors that you are the team that's going to make this happen. They've got a good product, a good market that you're working towards, or you've achieved product market fit, and that you've got a plan to achieve traction in that market. And then once you start hitting your goals, you'll be able to have those valuation discussions. Key questions for this one: when will the business get to 50, 100, maybe 200K in monthly recurring revenue? Now you start to be able to have that bigger conversation and you're ready to take on bigger dollar amounts and start to really accelerate your growth pattern. Number 2, what KPIs will justify that higher valuation? Just know what your targets are, know what your investors are looking for. And who can help build this business? So this goes from both sides. If you're an investor, do you know anybody who can come in and help this company? And if you're on the founder side, what does the investor bring to the table that's going to help you really accelerate your progress? Number 4, this one is one of the areas where I spend a lot of my time as somebody who is sort of the middle person in between investors and founders. I believe very firmly that you cannot oversimplify something, and that as an entrepreneur, one of your core goals should be to continuously simplify and refine. I've never met an investor that said, I just couldn't invest in that company. Their value proposition was just too clear. Their go-to-market strategy was just too well thought out. It just made too much sense to me. So err on the side of them not knowing all of the industry jargon, not even knowing all the finance or business jargon, and make things super, super clear. Just to give you a little metaphor or analogy to remind you of this, my daughter has a Shark Tank assignment coming up at her school, which is great because it's the first time that she's ever asked for and listened to my advice since in the 11 years that she's been on this planet. But it was really fun talking to her about business stuff. And we're in the dining room and we're talking about gross revenue. And she's like, yeah, that's like all the money you get. Good job, Williston Central, for teaching her that. But my son is 9, is in the other room, and he says, why is the money gross? Is it because it has germs on it? And so my thought exercise for founders and investors is to give your pitch, your deck, or talk about your company to people who know nothing about it. They're not industry veterans. They're not seasoned investors. And every place where something is confusing to them, simplify it and then ask it to somebody else until anyone on the street can easily understand what you're doing. They're not going to understand every intricacy, but they should be able to get the business. Same with investors. Don't bog founders down with all these complicated terms. They're going to be there, I know that, but when you're talking about pro rata or discounts or caps, just put it in plain speak. look, I want to have a shot at the next round, and I want to pay less than the other guys because I helped you out early on and I deserve a reward for that. Just keep it simple, clearly articulate your value proposition. Can it tell you how many investors have told me, I like this company, but they can't put their unit economics together. They can't tell me how their product is going to be profitable. They can't show me how they're going to take their current customers and get to their projected 1,000 customers in the next 6 months. So err on the side of explicitly and clearly explaining it. And the key questions for this one are, is there product market fit? Who else is doing this? Why is this solution better? Yes, you do need an answer for that. And how will you get the customers needed to hit your projections? Okay, so forget about, I'm going to get 1% of this multi-billion-dollar market. No, I've got these customers, they're here. This is how I'm going to get the rest of them that look like that one. And make it super clear. All right, almost there. Number 5. I think I got a minute left. So this one is more for investors. I get it. You're taking a risk. You worked hard for your money. But I will say that I've not met a founder yet who really has enjoyed the process of fundraising. And they would much rather be spending all their time building their business, selling their product, and making money. But it's a necessary evil. And in many cases, it can create really great relationships. But respect that they are taking time out of their workday to do this, and the fact that they're probably having dozens and dozens of meetings and answering tons of questions and sending documents and going through a lot of process. I'm not saying you shouldn't put them through process, but if you are, be respectful of their time. So have your own process, understand what you're looking for. If this does not fit in your strategy or what you're looking to do, just say no. Don't leave them hanging. Don't ghost them. Just get back to them politely. Just say, sorry, this doesn't fit. If it's a not yet, just explain why, and then come up with some thoughtful KPIs that you'd like to see. So I need you to hit, 50 in monthly recurring revenue, and then I'm ready. But if you make those commitments, if you put those goalposts there, don't move them. When they hit 50, be ready to go. Don't say, I'm not so sure. Can you get to 75? Okay, if you make a commitment, hit it. And then once you get to that stage where you're feeling pretty good, you understand your process, you know what types of deals you're looking for, stick to your process. Hear the pitch, follow up with questions, maybe have a follow-up meeting, but then really quickly decide, am I going to move into due diligence with this company, or is this not right for me? And be upfront and open with the company and let them know. Don't string them along, send them mixed messages. It's fine to say no. Okay, that's okay. But what really hangs up founders if they're constantly having to chase you down for any answer, if you're sending them, yeah, maybe I think so, or maybe I have a few people interested, and then you just disappear. Okay, so imagine there's like a investor founder Ghostbuster squad out there right now coming after you. Just get back to them. Basic respect stuff. Same on the founder side. Okay, make sure you follow up quickly and don't waste the investor's time. So last questions for this. When does the round close, or is the investment needed? Make sure everyone is on the same timeline. Figure out, does this thing fit into my strategy? And then lastly, what information is needed to make a decision? And both parties should be clear about that. Get the information out there, look at it quickly, and try to make a decision in a timely manner. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn the camera and mic now over to David, who's going to talk about this wonderful process that's designed to really get the mechanics and the logistics out of the way for this period after the pitch and before the money gets wired.
Thanks, Sean. That was really interesting. And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Bradbury with the Vermont Seed Capital Fund and VCET. We work with about 300 companies a year, providing free coaching, advice. 200 people co-work in our facilities. And over the lifetime, we've had 59 portfolio companies through direct investment or donated shares to our entity. Those companies have now raised over $250 million in capital. Their payroll is just under 200 million cumulatively, and really exciting. And this is up considerably in the last 2 years. They've now earned over 220 million in revenues. So really feeling good about the ecosystem, and all the credit in the world goes to the entrepreneurs, and thanks to those who backed their companies early on. I want to take a few moments and talk about due diligence and try to hit on some points that are perhaps of interest and help to both the investor and to the entrepreneur. And some will be sort of sophisticated and obvious, others may be trivial or not helpful, but we'll see if we can do a broad overview here. I want to start with the investor perspective and just sort of demystify it. So what is due diligence? This is the second date. The pitch deck is the commercial. You say, oh, I kind of like that. Well, let me dig in. And this is a process. And really it's a search and testing for obvious fraud. How unrealistic or realistic is the fiction that they're describing about their business and company that will be built in the future? What's the future look like? Are they optimistic? Is this coming across as out of necessity or because there's opportunity? And candidly, as an investor, is this fun? Plenty of things that pull you down, but being involved with a team taking on challenges of today and tomorrow should have some sort of fun, however you define it. The process can be light or heavy, fast or slow, some or none. It's up to each of us to decide what makes us fulfilled, responsible, and happy in this process. One thing I think investors need to know is that you're signaling the type of investor and supporter you will be to founders through your due diligence process. John just raised a couple points about moving the goalpost. And it's also sort of tone, frequency of how you communicate. Because not all investors get into companies that are syndicating rounds. We're seeing more and more competition locally to get into certain investments. So know that you're signaling with your interaction. And also due diligence, it's more than just the pile of legal documents we sign that acknowledge the risks and all the reasons why we wouldn't invest. It's really some other things that we'll get to in a moment. I think the biggest thing for investors is to pick your method, know the method by which you want to participate in due diligence if you choose to do this more than once. And really the three groups from my lens are you outsource it, you pay a venture fund 2.5% management fee to do the work for you. There are outside consultants that do the due diligence, financial advisors, accountants, CPAs. And I also throw that gut feeling as an outsourced model, like what I had for lunch makes me feel a way, and therefore I view a company a certain way. Do it yourself. Some people like to pick their own stocks, other people like index funds, but this is a go it alone. It's how you dive in. You use domain expertise that you've accumulated in your own careers, and you follow maybe perhaps a thesis. This has always been my preferred path of angel investing, which I began in Vermont in 1998. And then the groups, angel groups, North Country Angels, or the Investors Group Janice Shade has put together with Laurie Seligman too. A few close pals or gals, trusted sources that may be leading investments that you can be a fast follower to. I think from the founder perspective, due diligence it's the holy crap, this is real moment. You put so much energy and effort to getting a meeting, producing a pitch deck that, wow, someone wants to talk to me. This is great, now what do I do? But know that this is your opportunity to confirm, all right, or grow the initial impressions made by you to the investors. Okay, this is that second date analogy I used. It's a process you have to prepare for in advance and a timeline to be managed. So again, you can prepare, you know this is coming, and we'll share a couple ideas here in a moment. You also need to pick your method on how you want to do the due diligence with a group of investors that express interest. Do you want to outsource this or manage it yourself? Huge strategic question for founders. Do you want to manage these relationships, most of which are in the formative stages? No one's really committed yes or no. Or do you want to put your bets on one or two specific investors making this decision for everybody? It really depends on the scenario. My preference is I advise, and we advise companies here to manage the investor relationships themselves until the last moment when perhaps it's an opportunity to make introductions with leads or between others that are participating. How you choose to go this route really does set the tone today into the future on how you interact with your investors forward. Okay, so fundamental decision. I think most people don't know they're making it. So founders, if you take away one thing, that is the one thing I hope you take away with today. And really the basics of virtual data room. This is almost standard and expected today. This can be a Dropbox, a Google folder. There's several third-party sites for a couple $100 that you can use. And what it does mostly is it signals to investors, we have our act together. We have a cadence to this fundraising process. It's moving. We're talking to multiple people, and we've got all of our information transparent, the good, the bad, and the ugly, here in a room for you to access. For the team, and at times it's outside counsel, it allows you to track who's been accessing the information, what their cadence of consideration is, so that you can drive toward a closing date. It really is the expectation to have nowadays. So some of the basics really for a pre-seed, a seed, and even what formerly used to be known as a Series A round. I think these basics, I want to just touch on a few before we really get into questions. What do you want to accomplish here? You want to meet the principals and really judge their integrity, their intelligence, and their likability. Those are the three things that repeatedly come up time and time again with the founding team. If a founder says they have 3 people on their team, then go meet all 3, not just via one proxy. Business reference checks are absolutely critical. And then also some of the softer checks on social circles, whether it's Facebook or what they're ranting about on Twitter, just to make sure that what they show in a presentation is similar to how they present in their private life or to you one-on-one as an investor. I like to encourage folks really touch for coachability. That really is relevant for those investors who want to be more active and coaching and consultative and supportive of their teams that they back. You get to see the personality traits. Are they aggressive? Are they defensive? Are they high energy, tell you anything you need to hear? Or are they reflective? And I think, you get to sort out, again, the type of people you want to back over time through the good and the bad and the unknown of startups. Consistency, candor, and I really put a high weight on curiosity. That really shows humility of the founding team, that they don't have all the answers, and here's how they think about finding them. And they ask what if, or how to, can we? Those I find are just absolutely wonderful, wonderful signs to see. Product and service, that's really the other area with an early stage company do you want to look at. Does it work? Does the beer taste good? Does the software help? And really, do you absolutely love it? And will people covet it, right? It's really tough to introduce something new to the world. So do they covet it? And just because you like it, maybe ask a few others, okay? Because again, I think so many of us are supporting Vermont companies and of all types, that we want to make sure that the market is bigger than perhaps our neighborhood or our 802 zip code, area code rather. Customer references, do these by phone or I guess video, not by email. I find you don't get really good insights via email. People are more accessible by phone today, and they will give you very candid, open-ended sort of talks about experiences with the founding team or even in the product sector. A lot of times people want to know about IP and freedom to operate. Couple screens you can do as an individual investor. You can do some quick searches at the USPTO trademark and patent website. You can read the provisional patents that they provide. Ask some experts in the area as to how difficult it is to create a moat or to be defensible based upon your IP. And really, freedom to operate is to make sure they're not mistakenly or intentionally misappropriating a name, a logo, a saying, or something like that. Pretty easy, you can do that in 20 minutes. And then this is what VSET uses. We've got about 130 expert mentors across most all sectors that we go to them and we ask their expertise. So that when the rocket scientist walks in the door and says, I want to put CubeSat satellites into space, we can say, we know nothing about that, but let's go find the 3 people who do. So we went and accessed people that run Virgin Orbit, people that started and launched OneWeb, which are small satellite constellations, and then the founders of Loral Space. So that's how we de-risked, got informed, helped the entrepreneur, and that was part of our process. And I think in Vermont, that is one of our advantages. People are willing to help, talk to us, both the founders and together with their investors about a particular domain area. Projections or pro formas. I noticed Mike Keller was on the line and a few others, CPAs, the rest. I look at projections, it's fiction, right? Let's just put that on the table. The early years are our best estimates, and you're really trying to test the logic and the key business assumptions that the team is using that drive the models. How reflective of reality is this? Where can you add some value perhaps, and bit of data points, but it's really just, you want to see how they're going to judge, operate, and react to business challenges forward. Some numbers don't even add up. That is just such a sinking feeling when you go in to do due diligence, and I've probably done due diligence on over 170 companies by now. When columns don't add up, or revenue is one number here and a different number there, or their capital numbers are off, like, you got to get your act together. It needs to be harmonized and consistent. Otherwise, your credibility is at play. You know, if you could do a 3-year outlook, awesome. Really the first year, month by month, simple cash flow statement or worksheet that shows revenues, how are you going to spend the money, and what the cash balance or burn rate might be. Really, the goal of the first year is the second year. So that's why we focus on monthly in the first year, and make it easy to follow and be cash flow focused. And really, the fourth thing that's purely basic in these due diligence are sort of the offering documentation. You know, in this virtual data room that you want to use, or this Google Doc, investor presentations, term sheets, cap tables. Stunningly, a lot of entrepreneurs don't include a cap table. Make it easy. This is what it looks like today. Here's the pro forma from this transaction, and here's what you might own as a percentage afterwards. I think that's a simple, valid thing to ask. Articles of incorporation are really the other one. You want to see how the governance structure works, voting, state of incorporation, things like that. And then securities docs. Those are sort of the biggies. And for those that have some operating history, certainly tax returns. That's the easiest way to validate that a company actually has sales, and maybe it said it did, or is in good corporate standing here in the state. And then we do often see a shareable format as a requirement, an Excel sheet or Google sheet, just in case investors want to run some sort of analysis on spend or accelerating certain areas to static test your model. The documentation, it needs to be attorney prepared. Do not do it yourself. People do it all the time. They go to Y Combinator, they pull down a safe doc, or they made one up that somebody used. It is just terrible. It's just absolutely terrible. So please don't do it. It will save you time, frustration, and money. Now, finding an attorney, there's some great ones around here locally, but I would suggest that you make sure that they're in the habit and practice of doing a number of transactions a year. And lastly, just to not take up more time, why due diligence, I think, is important to our ecosystem. Karen Cross shares some numbers on the dollars of investments going in, some of the frequency trends on Monday, which were interesting. And really, you know, from my lens, better due diligence that's reasonable really benefits by increasing the number of new and returning investors, all types, institutional, corporate, any geography. It just builds confidence. It actually improves the probability for outcomes. Again, the house is more in order. Certain decisions are made and acknowledged earlier in the process, so that there's fewer surprises in that critical year one or in year two for sort of growth mode. And then I think better due diligence actually helps founders. It raises the collective game here. And that helps everybody who is so cooperative now and helping each other out on a peer-to-peer basis, introducing customers, investors. This really just helps the whole spectrum of starting, scaling, exiting along the way. And again, I think Vermont is getting there. We're still known for a lot of ice cream and salsa and food, but our tech is really starting to punch above its weight. And I think it's a way through more reasonable due diligence, a process in place, where companies get to be really known as successful, succeeding, and what a great place to live, work, and start a company. And with that, Sam, we'll turn it back to parting thoughts. Again, know your method. Due diligence just confirms initial impressions. Entrepreneurs manage the process for scarcity, meaning getting in the deal, timing, keep a cadence going, and drive toward a close. And new investors, it's really great to watch a couple times before investing, I think, to understand the process a bit and get your own thesis, your own preferences established. And new founders talk to peers. And again, early stage companies, growth companies, it's a roller coaster. And you love the roller coaster or you don't. And I think more of us seem to enjoy it. And thank you for backing companies here in Vermont.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. So before we start Q&A and make sure you're getting your questions in there, I just wanted to share our asks, because we would not be proper entrepreneurial supporters if we didn't have an ask, and that is to check out the LaunchVT applications that are opening tomorrow and spread the word for any entrepreneurs that you think might want to apply. And then also join the Vermont Startup Collective, which is sort of an online ecosystem for all folks interested in entrepreneurship or investing in Vermont. And with that, I think we can stop our share and do some Q&A. So we'll start here. I think this one's for Dave. How do you address unconscious bias in your diligence process?
Yeah, great question. We strive to, and part of it is making sure we've got different perspectives at the table, both on the pipeline end, make sure that if we're not seeing certain areas of our economy, representation within our community applying, then why? What are we using poor words? Does the process seem too formal, or is it too informal? It may turn off some folks that way. Through training, through education, shared materials around our investment committee. We, with the seed fund, don't make investment decisions solely. It's not my individual call. We try to bring in folks that, again, add value to perspective, help us identify companies with high potential and rather high opportunities, but more importantly, we focus on the team with high potential, no matter their background, where they come from. And the Vermont Seed Capital Fund was really formed to help initiate new foundings. And we've done 23 companies to date out of the fund and have helped another 30 or so get money, and the future looks bright, but we'll continue working on that for sure.
Yeah, that's a great question. This one's for John. How much communication is too much communication? Or in other words, how often should entrepreneurs follow up with investors if they're not hearing back?
Well, I would err on the side of persistence. It doesn't have to be a very long-winded follow-up, but poke them. Ask them to say no, at the very least. And so, I encourage entrepreneurs to follow through. I mean, I don't mean to be disparaging of anyone who's ever not responded to someone. I'm certainly guilty of it myself. But being too busy is not a good enough excuse. You should ask for a response. And so keep it simple, to the point, but be persistent.
Love that. Dave, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I've found over the years, Friday evenings is a really fantastic time to reach an entrepreneur, or Sunday morning, rather an investor, or Sunday mornings. On the institutional side, Sunday afternoons, if you're talking to an associate, because they're all prepping for their Monday meetings. So that's when you can find folks. I've personally with companies over the years, I've found out where they ski. I have found out what events they're at, and I have somehow magically been there and struck up conversations. That's how we got Pony Express funded years ago, and a few other things. Not stalking. I like snowboarding like the rest, so it just happened to be part of the method.
Yeah, I think that's great. I've seen the best way to do it is to just get creative and be yourself, really. I think when you send really generic, like, hey, just looking for response emails, that's not appealing. But if you follow up with really exciting, updates, maybe you hit a certain level of revenue, or like you said, Dave, like, reaching out at events and following up like that, it's a great way to do that. This one's for Dave. Can you share an example of when your due diligence process failed you?
Yeah, for sure. We funded a company years ago that was teaching English as a second language that had arrived here in Vermont from Europe. We had some concerns about why we were so lucky they were coming to Vermont and what happened. And they had a principal place of operation in Malta. And one of our investment committee members just happened to be in Europe at the time. So we had him make a side trip to actually validate that this thing was in existence with people working in Malta, knocking on doors. And that was done. That was a big indication that this wasn't some fraud or some obvious scam of some sort. And we like the market, the upside. But at the end of the day, just because they were there didn't make it a successful business. So that was a real failure on our part. We could have done a few more things, I think, in retrospect.
Awesome. We have a question from Dr. Andrea Grayson, who asks, for either of you, John, let's start with you, and then Dave, if you have additional thoughts, you can add them. Are you seeing any trends with social enterprises in Vermont, or is the big trend tech?
Absolutely. That's been a trend for several years now. It's great. There's never been a greater variety of business models to support social enterprise, and a greater number of investors or financial institutions who have creative models to support them. So we see probably at least half of our cohort every year have a very the social and environmental impact of their work is baked right into the business model, which is great to see. Still needs to be economically viable, but it's great to, Vermont has sort of, I wouldn't say a specialty, but there's a lot of people who know how to do social enterprise or sustainable business here in Vermont. So it's a good place to start that type of business.
Awesome.
I from my lens, it's really blurred with tech. OMD doing text and video based coordination of, vaccination and COVID care. That's a hybrid. Or ThinkMD, another great company doing things. So I tend to view social less about what sector you're on than what's it mean to your community. So we backed a company that was in operation for 8 years down in the Woodstock area that had an app for nature. And it ultimately failed. It wasn't because it didn't raise capital. It was more of a product fit issue. But boy, we had 14, 17 people at one point working in downtown Woodstock at the second story of a really weird office space. So again, from our lens, that had impact. And many of those team members, after that wrapped up, have gone on into new companies that they've started, but they're also key executive and larger employers. So again, I don't personally have a strict lens as to what's social or not. I don't want to be the arbiter of that sort of label, but I think we can choose how we want to define it here on different ways.
Awesome, great answer. I'm going to answer one really quickly. John, this is good news. It looks like we have some folks very eager to apply for LaunchVT. So eager, in fact, that they're trying to get in a day early. So the link is not working because it doesn't go live until tomorrow. So you'll be able to apply tomorrow. So thanks for that question and clarification. Sorry, that was unclear. I got excited. This is a great question. Dave, we'll direct this one to you. Are you seeing more older founders that have recently retired? Any advice on how they operate when looking for investors?
Yeah, it's because of my gray hair, right? I saw John Burton ask that question. So we're seeing more founders, period. VSAT, we worked with 300 companies in calendar 2020. We had 100 walk in the door the first 90 days after shutdown. So it's still unclear to me whether the initiative, the impetus for that was they're scared about the future and they want to control their own destiny, right? Or they saw new opportunities in this disrupted world. Is it different for an older founder? Again, I don't think so. I mean, most companies are still founded by people in their 40s that tend to scale. So depending on how you define old, I think we're seeing, Sam, we're seeing more and more involvement with folks that sort of have flex time or maybe they're partially retired getting involved because there's a problem or a condition in the world that's been really nagging at them and they want to solve it. So I haven't seen any difference in investing dollars. I haven't seen there's no due diligence process difference in that. But I think go for it. I mean, the more ideas, the more opportunities, the better.
Any thoughts to add there, John?
So, we run these series of other programs called React around the state for people that are just getting started. Maybe they've got a concept or a prototype in development, but aren't ready for the market yet. And the trend I've seen there is folks that have maybe been noodling on a technology or a business idea for 10, 20 years. And the pandemic really either gave them the time or unfortunately forced them to explore that as a means to a livelihood. And so we are seeing more entrepreneurs who tend to be a little bit older because they are now pursuing these things that they've been thinking about for a while. And I think that that's great. And, Dave talked about this a little bit, we've seen this in previous economic downturns, but, the overall entrepreneurial energy is up for good or worse, I should say because of good or worse. And we just need to capitalize it. We need to rise to the occasion and support those founders. And that may mean with investment dollars. Someone asked about unconscious bias. It's certainly, I think age does come into play a lot. And for us, when we're evaluating companies, and we have a very thorough process, and we also use a team approach, but it's really about energy. And so it doesn't matter what age you are, if you're ready to go and put in the time and energy and, sort of take the lumps still, we're right behind you. And we've seen a lot of great founders who are in their second careers or have started several companies in their later stages of life. I wouldn't say that they're going to retire. They may never retire, but they're wonderful because they're super experienced, knowledgeable. They've made lots of mistakes already. They're humble, they listen, and they're really great entrepreneurs. And so we love bringing them into our programs.
Yeah. I think we've been seeing a trend too towards like multi-generational teams, which is really cool as well, and very well balanced. Folks that are bringing really different skill sets and perspectives. So I think that's, as the more diverse a founding team, the better. This is a great question. You both kind of touched on it. I'll direct this one to John first. Can you get past likability issues? So, let's kind of on either side, if great business opportunity, projections look great, but there's just something about the founder that, doesn't feel right. Should you move forward, or is that reason to turn down a perfectly viable investment?
You should make an effort to understand where the friction is, for sure. If you can't work with people who you don't see eye to eye with all the time, then you're not going to be successful anyway. And there's just too few companies and too few investors at the end of the day. And so, I really encourage people to be open and honest, understand what they want, communicate it clearly, and see if they can find some common ground. Do it efficiently. You don't want to waste your time, but if it's a good idea, it should be considered. And if this person is a sincere partner who can help you financially and otherwise, you really need to evaluate that and take a good look at it.
Any thoughts, Dave?
Yeah, I don't think the standard is you got to be BFFs and, hang out on vacation. But, I think at the core of likability, there's trust. There's, do I want to be committed to subsequent rounds of investment? Because, the first angel check you write, you're going to write one or two more. It just happens. That's the nature of the beast, and it will be up and down. So, but I do think, you need to, it's incumbent upon all of us to be more open and get out of our little holes, and whether it's our bias or our social circles or our, where we choose to live, we need to be open to new and all opportunities, because we don't know where change is coming. We just know it's coming, and we better be curious and hungry and receptive. One other thing that's come up over the years, that just our investment committee, every year or twice a year, we do a real deep dive on what we learned, what went wrong, and why, so that we may have some predictors future. And one thing has come up that often new money into a company doesn't solve the character trait that you hope will change with money. It amplifies it. Okay, it doesn't solve it. So if someone never is focused because they just seem nervous about running out of money, then you give them money, it doesn't make them focused. They become more unfocused. So, and that has really been, how do you mitigate that, particularly if it's something you want to support in your community or an underrepresented group or a sector you love? I think you really want to wrap around some mentoring talent, some advisory board. Maybe you pull in someone with some experiences, or they go through Launch VT or Delta Klein Vermont for energy things, or work with VSET or others here in the ecosystem. So again, that's been one thing we did not expect when we started investing in this portfolio, but.
Yeah, great answer. Great, we have a great question from Jillian Nanton. What are you seeing in terms of where investment dollars are going, given that we are now into the recovery phase from COVID-19? Are we seeing any new trends beyond the tech sector? Will we be building back better and more sustainable, given where investment is flowing? Dave, you want to start there?
Sure. COVID's nowhere near over, and I'm often reminded that after COVID-19, there'll be COVID 20, 21, and 22. So we're in this really new world order of global health awareness, and how that impacts travel, deployment of medicine, responsibility, and coming to the workplace or not. Like, it's created massive disruption and opportunities for new business. So it actually is a terribly exciting time to be taking on systems that deserve to die or deserve to be disrupted because there's a better way. I mean, gosh, just here in Vermont, right? Drinks to go, telemedicine. We can do things electronically now with paying for lawyers and banks. I mean, all this sort of friction and frustration are being removed from our system. And that's where businesses evolve. It's free and fabulous. It solves friction in the enterprise, or solves consumer frustration. So, and I think the investments are flowing into there around the built economy, right? How do we manage buildings, streetscapes, cities better? Social justice, like how do we use new companies, products, sort of lens, so that we're servicing areas better, more fairly, more regularly over time. So really, it's an awesome time to be looking for investments. I just wish our seed fund had more money. So for those that help, we'll be back in the legislature looking for a $10 million recapitalization. So we can get another $500 million in funds alongside of us coming into Vermont here. So help us.
Nice plug. John, any thoughts that you wanted to add there?
Oh, I would just say that, it's been super important to shore up the businesses that are core to the state's economy. And a lot of great work has been done. At some point, we'll need to transition. That point might be now, it may be in 6 months, I don't know. But resources do need to get deployed to places where they can create jobs, to hire the people whose jobs are not going to be there or are already gone. And so with every crisis, there's an opportunity here. We do need to prioritize some portion of our dollars to go to companies that it might seem counterintuitive are doing well, but that's where we're going to create the jobs that are going to be future, or be resilient through the next crisis, and they're going to help Vermonters stay here long term, which is a huge part of the Vermont economy.
Great. This is a great question from Anju. What is your advice to entrepreneurs, especially startups, whether to raise capital during the ongoing pandemic or delay fundraising plans? Dave, you want to jump in?
There's never been a better time to raise capital. Okay, people are home at the institutional or at the angel level. They're home, they're bored silly, they're accessible. You can get them on a Zoom call, phone. So I think just access has improved. And then, the people with money have gotten a boatload more money over the last number of years, and they're chasing yield. So they're trying to take cash that earns nothing. And, COVID has really made us all look at our communities and our countries differently to want to, again, affect positive change, to do some local investing. So it really is a great time. You still need to work on the fundamental basics of why this is a great business and the problem that we're solving and sort of our go-to-market. But again, Karen's numbers showed it, the activity here. I was just involved in a fundraising process that was 9 days total, 4 term sheets, and unbelievable. It closed, it was in 9 days, it was done from scratch. So it can happen in Vermont.
Absolutely. Good advice. Quick one for you, Dave. In terms of due diligence, especially for first-time investors or folks that are sort of doing it for the first time, is there an area of due diligence where you definitely should not take someone else's word for it?
Oh, great. I would just go right to the product or service. The food tastes great. This is the best vegan whatever I've ever had. Well, taste it and find 10 others. So I think just because one person drank the Kool-Aid doesn't mean that the masses will. So I tend to think, all else equal, the product and the team at the earliest stages, you need to get comfortable with, because that's where it goes wrong, right? So spend your time on those two.
Awesome. Final question is from me to John. John, who should apply for Launch VT? When is it too early? When is it too late? What's the sweet spot? If they're not sure, can they ask you? What's the deal?
Awesome. Thanks for setting that up, Sam. It is really important because, there is some materials we ask you to prepare and we don't want to waste your time. So I would say, to summarize it, you need to be ready to go. You should be working on this full time. You should be able to commit for a 12-week period, a lot of time and energy. You're going to be pretty much talking to lots of people. We had over 200 people involved in our accelerator last year. You're going to get lots of advice. You're going to have to sift through it all. You're going to have to make decisions. You're going to have to try stuff. And ultimately, you need to be in market or really ready to go into market so that you can try this stuff out and move quickly with your acceleration. So that's kind of the cusp we like. Usually we have people that haven't raised more than $1 million but have a product that's ready to go, and they as a team are ready to go.
Awesome. Great. And again, those applications open tomorrow, launchvt.com. Join the Vermont Startup Collective, vermontstartupcollective.com. I have put those links in the chat, and as well as our email addresses. If you have any questions or there's anything you want us to follow up on, please feel free to reach out. All 3 of us are very happy to help. And thanks so much to VCF for organizing this week and letting us do this awesome event. So hopefully it was helpful to all of you, and we really enjoyed spending our lunch hour with you. So thanks for coming, and share the webinar.
See ya. Thanks.
Thank you.